Thanks so much for joining us. All of you flew in, so we really appreciate this. This panel could have been potentially in New York because I know you guys all spend time there. Carolyn, let's start with you and tell us about Drop and what's the story for Drop?
So Drop obviously has been going on for about a year now, and we've had some significant involvement in it. And basically what we're doing is we're building a platform that allows, as he said, all media to be shoppable and backed by blockchain. We have a strong AI component. We came into the market when ICOs were really hitting their peak, but we didn't want to launch our ICO at that time because we were in the process of getting our MVP done. When our MVP was finished, the ICO market sort of blew up, and as a result, we took a backseat and decided to kind of readdress what we wanted to do, and as such have decided to do a security token offering, which we are about to start within this month out of Bermuda. So it's been an interesting process.
And that's actually going to be based out of Bermuda. And so will that be the first STO in Bermuda?
To my knowledge, yes.
That's amazing.
I believe so.
So breaking news. Larry.
Hi there. So we have two separate business lines that we've domiciled in Bermuda. One is Alpha Innovations, which is a asset management firm. We're setting up a suite of Irish domiciled funds that we'll be managing out of Bermuda here. We're very excited about that, really geared to institutional investors. Separately from that, we also have Laureate Digital Securities, which is a suite of blockchain companies that we're in the process of building out now. Again, domiciled in Bermuda to support the issuance, administration, and secondary market trading of tokenized funds. I hate the word tokenized because there's nothing token about what these are. These are underlying assets. These assets being fund investments and that. So that's kind of what we're doing here.
All right. So Carbon is building price stable cryptocurrencies. We launched on the Ethereum network a few weeks ago. We launched a fiat-backed stablecoin that's regulated, FDIC insured, and we've developed a novel mechanism for seamlessly transitioning to a hybrid fiat algorithmic stablecoin once Carbon USD reaches sufficient scale and liquidity on exchanges, and I can talk about that later. We raised a seed round of equity earlier this year from investors such as TCG, General Catalyst, First Mark, and others. And we're embracing a philosophy of blockchain interoperability. So we're developing on other protocols such as Hedera Hashgraph, which I was on the founding team of, which can support higher throughput and also bank-grade security. So that's something we're very excited about.
So, Miles just came from Dallas, where you were at the Hashgraph conference. Some of the people probably don't know a lot about Hashgraph, and you probably know more than anyone in the room.
Yeah.
So can you give us just a minute on Hashgraph, because it is a really exciting technology, and let's talk about maybe that compared to these other protocols like Hyperledger or Ethereum, and then we'll work our way back across some of these other questions.
Yeah, so when I first learned about Ethereum back in 2015, I started to realize that, blockchains, while they're very innovative, there's some inherent limitations regarding scalability. So I started researching, alternatives to blockchains and other consensus algorithms that can support much higher throughput while maintaining high security. So I stumbled across Hashgraph last year, and I called the inventor, Dr. Lehman Baird, just to ask some questions. And I learned that in addition to handling hundreds of thousands of transactions per second in a single shard, Hedera Hashgraph also maintains a property called asynchronous Byzantine fault tolerance, which is theoretically the strongest form of security attainable in a distributed ledger. So while maintaining high throughput, it also achieves a high degree of security, which really excited me. It also achieves a property called fairness. So in blockchains, as you may be aware of, miners determine the ordering of transactions placed within each block. Hashgraph, on the other hand, actually achieves accurate timestamping on each transaction. So it basically enables sort of new applications such as fair markets, fair games, where miners cannot be bribed to say, place your bid before mine, even though that may have not been the case. So Hashgraph is a fundamentally new approach to distributed consensus. It's a directed acyclic graph data structure. It's not a chain of blocks. And it's not, a DAG that's, you may have heard of IOTA and other DAG structures. It's actually a fundamentally new approach to consensus that goes off of this idea of virtual voting, in that it's inspired by voting algorithms that date back from 30 years ago, which achieved asynchronous visiting fault tolerance, but were too inefficient to be used in practice because every node would have to send their votes over the internet. So the bandwidth requirements were simply impractical. Dr. Lehman Baird, the inventor, figured out, instead of gossiping about the metadata you'd normally have to gossip about in any cryptocurrency network. So Bitcoin has a gossip network, which is the fastest way of spreading information to all nodes. He figured out that we can actually gossip about gossip itself, and therefore achieve virtual voting where I know or a node can calculate with exact certainty what other nodes would have voted if they were to send a vote over the internet.
So it's like, is it probabilistic or like based on probabilities?
Byzantine fault tolerance is a property where nodes know exactly when the network has achieved consensus, and it essentially requires that no more than 1/3 plus one of the nodes are malicious.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's pivot to fashion, because that was pretty deep. Carolyn,
Much more shallow.
describe, I mean, that sounds like something that can power what you're doing, because you guys want to run a lot of transactions,
that was
right?
running through my head,
Yeah.
actually, yes.
But tell us about, what is Drop, and like, give us the user's experience with Drop.
So I mean, it's multifold, really. Basically, if YouTube, as I said earlier, YouTube and Amazon had a child, would essentially be Drop. And then basically throw in social media for good measure. But basically what it allows individuals to do is have their own platform to build their own brand, but it also allows media that's already out there and existing to have another layer of, monetizing its content. And so as a result, you've got this ability to build a platform that can redefine how people interact and shop. And the way that we're doing it is we're actually using crowdsourcing to train our AI. So in order to get information quickly, we're using exactly kind of what he said, which is more like the gossip network, to help create a deeper pool of being able to identify things.
So as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the idea of Drop, this is a two-part thing, but in a video, you can identify a piece of clothing. So like, we could look at this beautiful blouse or this t-shirt or this nice suit, and you could click on it.
Yes.
And are you building a blockchain identity for each of these garments that then comes to the back end so you can purchase? Or is it different?
That is in the AI. And we have a fulfillment company that we're working with. So that is more in the AI. So the blockchain comes in terms of helping to train the AI, where we're using the crowdsourcing to help identify objects and then rewarding them with a utility token. So we'll have drop tokens, which is kind of the equivalent of, I guess, like an airline mile type situation, where you can earn points and rewards that are then usable on the platform and to purchase things, or especially like an artist, if they were looking to build their own brand and didn't want to go with a label, they would have the ability to crowdsource and stake, and people could fund their project, or they can build their brand. They can create channels that allow them to sell their own merchandise using either drop tokens or traditional currencies. So there's a lot of layers, which make it really interesting and diverse.
Well, considering Amazon is worth over $1 trillion now, I think there's a lot of opportunity for this. So Larry, aside from Laureate Digital, you guys also have Alpha Innovations. Can you talk about how these two companies are working together, and why did you pick Bermuda as a place to domicile?
Oh, great question. Why Bermuda? A little bit of my background, I'm Canadian, and as I was looking to set up Alpha Innovations, I was looking for certain criteria and jurisdictions. One being that obviously we are an asset management firm. We need to be regulated by in a regulatory strict compliance regime. Bermuda certainly fits that bill. In fact, I mentioned earlier that our funds will be domiciled in Ireland. and we will be registered with the Central Bank of Ireland as a part of, we're required to. And the CBI only recognizes so many jurisdictions as equivalent regulatory jurisdictions. That kind of ruled out BVI, that ruled out Cayman, and then our choice came down between Bermuda and Guernsey, and I didn't want to live in Guernsey, so here I am, and we are. I'm physically moving here as soon as my work permit gets approved, so I'm looking forward to seeing you all here frequently. So that's Alpha Innovation. So the question was, well, what's the relationship with Laureate Digital? They're two separate companies. What we tried to do at the outset was we tried to build Alpha Innovations as really a blockchain-enabled asset management company. Forget what other asset management companies do. We're starting this from scratch. How do we build this for the future? And there's certain things that we're doing within the fiat asset management business too that will be incorporating blockchain. We're working with the service providers on how do we administer more efficiently via blockchain solutions and whatnot. We were using a lot of the AI techniques on our risk management infrastructure. But what we found that there's limits to what we could do as a regulated asset management firm. There's limits to what we can do on the blockchain side of things. So we set up Laureate Digital really to house all of our blockchain initiatives. So one of the things that Laureate Digital will be doing is tokenizing fund investments, and that's all within the Laureate Digital side.
So this is kind of big news for Bermuda because is this sort of the first what you might call blockchain dev shop that's been set up on the island, because that's going to require some talent from a technical standpoint?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, there's parts of it that we're building ourselves. There's parts that we're white labeling. But yes, we are hiring. We had interviews yesterday with people locally here, so we're very excited about the quality of the talent. So as long as the talent pool can keep up with our demand, we'll be recruiting here locally. Because as an entrepreneur, it's in my best interest to have less staff turnover. So if I bring in somebody from the outside, you're from New York or whatever, there's a high probability that person may want to leave after a year or two. I don't want that. I'm going to be here. I don't want my core management team to be committed to Bermuda. So ideally, we hire all Bermudians for those roles.
Great. And so Miles and Carolyn, for the three of you, this panel is about the idea of the token economy. So you represent essentially tokenized money, tokenized assets and securities, and let's just say tokenized merchandise, right? So because it goes beyond fashion. That is kind of the economy, right? We've got like three major sectors here. Tell me, how do you guys see this all evolving across things? Everyone, IBM and MIT with Hyperledger were here earlier in the week. We had a lot of discussions with people during Venn World about this idea of interoperability and the importance of interoperability. Where do you guys see that emerging? I mean, I think it's a clear fact that it needs to happen. What's the path by which you guys see interoperability for your own token systems? And maybe we'll start again with Miles.
Sure. I'll try to avoid getting too technical.
The technical is good. This is what we need. We all need this, big time.
I love talking about Hashgraph. Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, Carbon USD is developing interoperability solutions between Ethereum and other next generation distributed consensus protocols such as Hedera. And with a stablecoin, it's actually much more trivial to develop interoperability than with other complex dApps, because as long as there's interchain arbitrage liquidity, it's actually we can expect that a Carbon USD stablecoin on Hashgraph and a Carbon USD stablecoin on Ethereum, we'd expect that due to arbitrage between both chains, it will maintain its $1 exchange rate. So we're actually exploring a number of other emerging protocols, and I think that we're going to see, I don't necessarily believe that one protocol will be that dominant chain that all these companies build on. I think that certain chains have specific use cases. Maybe they're tailored towards certain industries more than others. But I certainly am very excited about interoperability, and this is an approach that Carbon in particular is taking.
Okay. Real quick,
Yeah.
what are your 3 favorite emerging protocols? 3 words.
Hashgraph?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've evaluated a lot. Gosh, I would say that EOS is very exciting. They have a giant war chest where they raise a lot of money.
Mhm.
You know, they, I think I'm hopeful that they can continue to improve the platform over time. Um, I'm also very excited about sort of alternatives to consensus algorithms. I'm looking at approaches that use trusted hardware. So gradient network is one. Um, Basically, trusted hardware um, is is a technology. You may have heard of Intel SGX, where I'll try to avoid getting too technical again. Um, but essentially, trusted hardware can be an alternative to consensus algorithms as long as it can prove the integrity of computations and also authenticity of the chip itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Larry, what are your thoughts on interoperability?
Well, for us, it's important. As I mentioned, we're going to be, Laureate Digital will be issuing security tokens on funds. We want the to make it as easy as possible for investors to buy and sell our tokens, but also be comfortable with the underlying blockchain. So we've looked at a lot of the other projects, things like Cardano and other EOS as well, and they're really, really interesting. But at the same time, we want to, especially our first tokens out the door, we want them to be, kind of easier for people to get comfortable with than that. But what we want is, and this is something that we're building into our offering documents, the ability to move chains. We don't know what the product, the chain offerings will be 2 years from now. We have no idea to predict that, but we want to have the ability to make sure that our tokens are utilizing the chain that makes most sense at that particular time. So if we go with ERC20 now, on a year from now, that may be an EOS solution or Cardano or whatever's available at that time. So, but the ability to move chains is important for us.
Yep. And again, I'm going to ask you the same question. What are your three protocols?
Oh, I wish you would ask my CTO that instead of me. I'm an investment guy, not a technologist and that, but I spent a lot of time, I mentioned Cardano, because that's one I've spent a lot of time researching, and just, it's so intellectually appealing for a number of reasons. The question is that, well, obviously, you need more, participants and that to really get off the ground. So will it be a success? I don't know. At this stage, I don't want to stake my company on an emerging chain.
We would agree. I mean, we've been in that position too. Carolyn, what about you on interoperability?
And similar to what you said, we're such a consumer-facing product that we really need it to work. And so whatever protocol works now, if that were to change, we need to be able to shift with it without it causing any hiccups. Because being so forward-facing, that could cause a huge problem for us.
That's a tall order. Now, when is the token sale going to go live? Because as a Bermuda-based token sale, this is going to be a big opportunity for us to get in on it. Like, how do we get drop tokens?
So we're starting our private sale this month, and then we're hoping Q1 of 2019 to do a public sale.
Right, great. Well, I have to say, this is so exciting having you guys on here, because this really does represent the emergence of the tokenized economy, which I was talking about 3 or 4 years ago, and it was a kind of fuzzy, weird thing that nobody quite knew what it was going to look like. This is what it looks like. So I can't wait to shop with my drop tokens, convert them into my carbon money, and then go shopping for some asset securities that will be based out of Bermuda. So thank you guys. Really appreciate it.